Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the 92 Days Project. If you do enjoy, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Doing so ensures I have better chances of getting noticed by this accursed algorithm. If you'd like to support me outside of views, head on over to my Patreon where you can support the channel for as little as $1 per month. As always, if you'd like to pick up a very well-made shirt or sticker, head on over to cnp-productions.com/store and pick yours up today. The shirts come in sizes from extra small to 2XL in black, navy, gray, and red, and the stickers come in 3, 4, and 5.5 inch sizes. I release a new shirt and sticker design with each episode of the 92 Days Project, and the designs are usually up 3 to 4 days in advance of the episode, so make sure to check back regularly for new options. Now, without further ado, let's dive into another crazy tale in the long and storied history of the most iconic American brand in the world. So, let's recap what we've previously learned about the Coca-Cola Company, the drink, and its early history. Dr. John Pemberton, a pharmaceutical doctor in the late 19th century and Civil War veteran, had been injured in combat and had become addicted to morphine over a period of time. After the war, and during the latter stages of Reconstruction, the temperance movement became increasingly more popular as the country saw a drastic rise in addiction and substance abuse. Pemberton, wanting to find a way to solve his addictions and those of his patients, began developing a non-alcoholic drink that could be bottled and sold as a treatment for symptoms of substance withdrawal, including headaches, nerve damage and disorder, indigestion, and even impotence. He would market the drink, named by his business partner and bookkeeper Frank M. Robinson as Coca-Cola, the temperance drink, and as such, he would see swift initial success. Eventually, of course, Pemberton would pass away and the patent would be bought by Asa Griggs Candler, and in 1892, he would incorporate the brand in the Coca-Cola Company, which exists to this day. By 1894, the Coca-Cola Company would outsource their bottling to the Beidenharn Candy Company, who would bottle the carbonated drink in Hutchinson bottles with the patented Hutchinson stopper, a far cry from today's iconic design. Now, the bottle would go through several different designs as different bottling plants use different bottle shapes, but eventually the standard would be found and the first Coca-Cola bottling company would open in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1899. Even still, it wouldn't be until 1915 that the world-renowned hobble-skirt-style bottles would become the universal standard for Coca-Cola products. In 1895, Candler's Coca-Cola Company would be sold to the Trust Company of Georgia under Ernest Woodruff, and would continue to grow into its own success. That same year, it would achieve the status of the first marketed non-alcoholic beverage to be sold in every single state in the U.S. Now, I am by no means an expert when it comes to how the stock market works. I may have passed my AP Econ test, but I think that says more about the test than about my knowledge of the stock market itself. Personally, I have no advice or particular interest in which stocks and bonds should or shouldn't be bought, sold, or traded, so please don't expect anything that I'm telling you to have anything to do with that. Alright? Good. So, the Coca-Cola Company is one of, if not the oldest publicly traded company in the United States. Since 1919, the New York Stock Exchange has listed the company under the ticker KO, and it originally sold shares at $40 a pop. Soon, the United States would see their first rise into modern superpowerdom as the only functionally successful economy to have come out of the Great War. This time would see many world standards still used today, including holding the United States dollar as the global conversion standard when looking at national currencies. In fact, the decade to follow the Great War would be known in the United States as the Roaring Twenties, as the country would see an increase in economic health and wealth across the board not seen anywhere else in history. While there certainly were still economic hills and valleys between the richest and poorest, the 20s would see the birth and rise of the modern middle class, as well as its rapid expansion. In another part of the country, a banker and shrewd businessman named Mark Welsh, or Mr. Pat Monroe, from the town of Quincy, Florida, had noticed that all his customers, regardless of economic status, wealth, or otherwise, would almost always choose to spend their last 5 cents on a bottle of Coca-Cola. You see, by 1919, Coca-Cola had become the national standard for soft drinks and would become a permanent facet in the wider American identity and a shining example of Americana. Everyone, from the richest Rockefeller to the poorest pauper, consumed this sugary substance on a near daily basis. Seeing this, Monroe had decided to buy out a massive number of shares himself. Coca-Cola was, at the time, trading stock for less than cash in the bank. He'd urged many of those who banked with him to buy as many stocks as they could afford to, and would even give out specifically low-interest loans just so his constituents could do so. Being that he was a banker, a man who at the time was trusted to take care of someone's entire life savings, and one with a reputation of treating his constituents with the same care as their money, many would follow his advice. In fact, by 1929, there were around 100 different families in the town of 4,000 people that had taken up his advice. In 1929, the New York Stock Exchange would crash and destroy not just the economy of a city, nor even a state, in fact, not even just the country. With the devastation of the US dollar came the devastation of the global economy. With the United States dollar being the world standard, if the dollar did not do well, the world would not do well. The stock market crash, however, was simply a harbinger of a much worse time to come. The Great Depression would ravage the world for over a decade and would cause near-permanent economic damage to countless across the globe. However, a lucky few would survive relatively unscathed, and no, I'm not talking about the Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, or what have you, but rather those wise enough to have listened to Mr. Monroe's advice nearly a decade earlier. You see, while the world may have been in shambles, the American icon still stood. People would spend their last 5 cents on a bottle of Coke even if it was the only 5 cents they had made that day. And as such, Coca-Cola and the Coca-Cola Company would still remain strong, and their investors would profit, even if merely marginally. Because of one man's intuition and observational prowess, an entire town had benefited. In fact, it was one of the few places in the country that had seen almost no economic downturn during that decade. Rather, because of the acumen of Mr. Monroe and those who had banked with him, the town saw a record number of investments in the local economy, more than enough to keep the entire town afloat.
I'm Don Keogh, president of the Coca-Cola Company. When we brought you the new taste of Coke, we knew that millions would prefer it, and millions do. And we knew that it would beat the taste of our major competitor, and it does. What we didn't know was how many thousands of you would phone and write asking us to bring back the classic taste of original Coca-Cola. Well, we read and we listened, and you know the rest. They're both yours, the new taste of Coke and CocaCola Classic. Your right of choice is back.
The Coca-Cola Company, seen as one of the few companies to actually turn a profit during the Great Depression, had been used as part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average throughout the 30s to show the renewal and very slow revitalization of the United States economy. In large part, though perhaps not majority, this can be attributed to the great reinvestment work of Pat Monroe and the Coca-Cola Millionaires of Quincy. If you were to visit today, there would be almost no public or semi-public building in the entire town that wasn't there in part because of the Coke money. If we look at a single $40 stock from 1919, and we assume that Pat and his investors each decided to reinvest each of their entire dividends year after year, then that single stock would be well over $6 million in 2012 and more than $10 million today. In fact, by the end of World War II, 67 families from Quincy would still retain their millions, and many still live there today. In 1933, oddly enough, the FBI would try to arrest Mr. Monroe for keeping his bank open during the, quote, bank holiday, where the federal government closed almost every single bank in the United States. Well, the catch? The warrant was made for a Pat Monroe, not a Mark Walsh Monroe. Now, luckily, nothing would come to pass of the attempted arrest, and Pat would continue to run his banks for several more years. Mr. Monroe would die at the age of 79, and in his will, along with the split of his material wealth and his assets, Mark would leave over $1 million to each of his children from 2 marriages. And for the record, that's 10 from his first wife, who had died at some point after their 10th child's birth, and 8 from his second. His children would also inherit an even split of his Coca-Cola stock, and they, along with their descendants, have never cashed out, choosing to reinvest time and time again. In fact, for most of the Coca-Cola millionaires, they've used their money to reinvest in both their stocks and their town. It's a common saying among their families that, quote, you can sell anything, even the house, but never sell the stock. It's been too good to us. Today, the town of Quincy, only 7,000 strong, still retains much of their Coca-Cola influence. You see, drinking Coke is a part of everyday life in this town, and in no small part, that's due to the selfless actions of Mr. Pat. After his death, many families would remark on Pat's generosity in both life and business. As a banker, he was willing to qualify people for loans that were twice what was asked, as long as they promised to invest half into Coca-Cola and never to sell. And because of this one man's actions and the trust afforded to him by generous and compassionate business practices, the lives of generations have been changed. If nothing else, Mr. Monroe has ensured that the town of Quincy has survived every single economic downturn since then. Hell, even this last year and a half has seen far less economic damage for the town than practically anywhere else in the country, let alone the world. From now on, when you take a sip of Coke, whether bottled, canned, or from a machine, remember Mark Walsh Monroe and how he shaped the history of not just the company, not just the product, but the lives of generations to come. Thank you all so much for watching. This prequel, unlike any other, doesn't contradict the established canon of the Coca-Cola story. In fact, I'd say it adds another dimension to the product's historic impact on American culture. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Doing so ensures I have better chances of getting noticed by the accursed algorithm, and if you'd like to support me outside of views, make sure to head on over to my Patreon, where you can support me and the channel for as little as $1 per month. And as always, if you'd like to pick up a very well-made shirt or sticker, head on over to cnp-productions.com/store and pick yours up today. The shirts come in sizes from extra small to 2XL in black, navy, gray, and red, and the stickers come in 3, 4, and 5.5 inch sizes. I release new shirt and sticker designs with each episode of the 92 Days Project, and the designs are usually up 3 to 4 days in advance of the episode, so please make sure to check back regularly for new options. Next week, join me for the finale of the 92 Days Project and a look at where the channel goes from here. I'll see you all then. Same bat time, same bat channel.